Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football, continuing our deep dive into this USC program heading into spring practice, fall camp, the 2024 season. We took a look at the offensive line, the defensive line, the offensive skill. Now we're taking a look at the USC secondary that has been completely overhauled, not only with the personnel that they brought in through the transfer portal, but the coaching staff changes as well. And if you're a USC fan, looking for this team to kind of get back on track in 2024. I think one of the units you're most excited about to take some massive steps in the right direction is the back end of this USC defense. Want to talk about what the linebacker room looks like and that secondary room looks like heading in to the 2024 year, and talk a little bit about what we saw from these units in 2023 as well. Really excited to get into this one. Before we do, just want to say thank you to you guys, and a massive shout out, as always, to the USC fans, a program that has been a blast talking about on the recruiting trail, the transfer portal, and these deep dives have been a blast for me. I've had a blast talking ball with you guys in the comment section. Really cannot thank you guys enough for all the support. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And without further ado, let's get into this one. And I want to start with what we saw from this unit in 2023. And for the USC listeners that have been rocking with the boys for the last couple of months, you guys know my frustrations and thoughts on this defense, specifically in the back end. And it starts with one of the more overlooked, but one of the more simple aspects of football, and that's tackling. And you look at the two linebackers that played the most snaps for USC on defense last year, the tackling was abysmal, right? Mason Cobb, a guy that was an all Big 12 performer at Oklahoma State in 2022, comes to USC, misses 24% of his tackles for the Trojans in 2023. And then true freshman Tackett Curtis, not far behind with 23.5% missed tackles. When you talk about playing disciplined defense, and many of you guys know as a Michigan fan, what made Michigan's defense so special in 2023, they didn't miss tackles. And it's often an overlooked aspect of the game. But at the end of the day, that is one of the biggest objectives in football, is to bring the ball carrier to the ground. And when you have your linebackers consistently not only having bad run fits in the run game, but even when they're in position to make tackles, missing those tackles, it is very hard to play extremely solid defense. And then you look at the back end, and I think I have more problems with the schematics of this defense, and obviously the development of guys like Damani Jackson really left a lot to be desired. And I think you have a lot of excitement for Lynn, who specializes in coaching the secondary, guy like Doug Bell coming to develop these players. But from a schematic standpoint, it was a really frustrating defense to watch. This was a defense that was ultra conservative at times, kind of playing that bend but do not break mentality of defense, where we'll let the offense kind of move the football, but we're going to try to bow up in the red zone. And when you have Caleb Williams in the USC offense that they had the last 2 years, it's not necessarily the worst idea to have, but you have to hold them in the red zone. And then you look at USC, they were 115th in red zone scoring on defense. So the bend but don't break, but they were breaking in the red zone, was a massive problem for this USC team. And you just saw teams like Washington kind of just chunk USC up, right? Short intermediate route concepts, getting the football out quickly, making people miss in space. That was, when you are playing that off coverage, you have to make sure you're coming up and tackling. And too often times, USC was missing those tackles. And now I don't want to spend too much time on what we saw from this USC defense in 2023, because at the end of the day, not only are you bringing in what I think could be a completely new starting secondary, but also a completely new coaching staff. I don't think that the 2023 season has much relevance into the discussion that we're going to have with this USC secondary and linebackers looking at that 2024 year. So I want to get into what this unit looks like. And I want to look at the unit that I'm probably most excited about, and that's the secondary. And I look at these transfers that they brought in at the cornerback spot, guys like John Humphrey, DeCarlos Nicholson, then in the safety room, Kamari Ramsey and Achille Arnold. I'm thinking those are four guys that they brought in the transfer portal that are going to be starting for USC in 2024. And I think you have some young talent on this team as well that, played okay during the Louisville game and that bowl game that will be competing for opportunities in 2024. But I think if you're USC, you have four guys that have shown that they can consistently play at a high level in the back end. I want to start with the cornerback room that I am extremely excited about. And you see the type of player Dan Lynn, Doug Belk want to bring in that secondary room, and that is long physical cornerbacks, right? Talking about John Humphrey, who follows Dan Lynn to USC from UCLA, 6'2", 205 pounds, had 7 forced incompletions, faced 52 targets, only gave up 30 catches, and the number that I'm highlighting the most, a 5.6% missed tackle rate. A phenomenal tackler in space, a guy that is sticky. He is long. He can get his hands on footballs. This is a guy that I think could be an all-conference performer for USC in 2024. And at the end of the day, Dan Lynn wouldn't have brought over John Humphrey if he didn't think he would help this defense in a meaningful way. And then take a look at what could be on the other side. You're talking about length and physicality, again, with the Carlos Nicholson coming from Mississippi State, a guy that played a ton of football in the SEC, goes 6'3", 200 pounds. Again, long cornerback. You're going to see him put hands on wide receivers. You're going to see him get hands on footballs. And I think with your USC, you have all this length. You have a lot of different coverages that you can kind of work in because you got guys that are filling up passing lanes with that length that they have. Really excited about the cornerbacks that they have. And then you look at the safety room. I think you bring in two guys that balance each other out phenomenally well, right? Achille Arnold coming from Oregon State, Kamari Ramsey coming from UCLA. Kamari Ramsey, I think his MO is he is that center field safety, kind of what Kalen Bullock gave for USC the last couple of years. A guy with phenomenal instincts, is phenomenal in coverage, but where I think he might be an upgrade from Kalen Bullock, a guy that I really do like, is Kamari Ramsey's physical tackler, right? The biggest knock on Kalen Bullock, phenomenal in coverage, playing that center field safety, going out, making plays on the football. When it came to firing downhill and tackling in space, Kalen Bullock left a lot to be desired. Kamari Ramsey, an 8.2% missed tackle rate. This is a guy that is not afraid to get his nose in the run game, but in the back end is a guy that has a ton of range, can go sideline to sideline when that football's in the air, make a lot of plays. And so I think Kamari Ramsey comes in probably a real starter at that free safety spot. Then you take a look at the other safety in Achille Arnold. One has played a ton of football for Oregon State over the last couple of years, part of a really good defense up there in Corvallis. And he's more of your box, potentially nickel defender, a guy that you take a look at a snap count, had over 350 snaps inside the tackle box at Oregon State. They want to get him involved in the run game. And I think these kind of players are extremely important at the college football level because you look at what teams want to do. They want to get speed on the field. They want to challenge your ability to play in coverage, but you want to be able to match that, but not give much up in terms of stopping the run. And a guy like Achille Arnold, who phenomenal in coverage, 34 targets, only gave up 18 catches, is a guy that is really good in coverage, but you can walk into the box and kind of have another linebacker type player that can defend the run, go sideline to sideline, and be physical at the point of attack. So you look at this secondary, and I think you brought in 4 guys that are, I don't know if I go as far to say bona fide starters, because I do think you have some guys that are coming back from this program for USC that could push them, but 4 guys that really improve the floor of what this defense is going to be. Like, you know, that if you, I guess I'll say it this way to best summarize my idea. If there's a player on USC that beats out one of those 4 players that we just talked about, you know they're going to have to be good because you got 4 really good players here for USC coming in that back end. Now you move to the linebacker spot, and this was probably the position that was the biggest disaster for USC. And you go and get North Dakota State's head coach Matt Entz to come coach the linebackers. That is a phenomenal hire. So I think the biggest thing that you saw with these linebackers, one, missed tackle rate. We talked about it with Cobb and Tackett Curtis. That was a problem. But more importantly, the instincts and how well these linebackers were coached and how they were run fitting, that was the biggest problem. And I think you massively upgrade your coaching staff with Matt Entz coming in. But more importantly, you add a guy in Easton Mascarenas-Arnold who is phenomenal against the run, had 30 run stops for Oregon State in 2023, over 100 tackles, a guy that is going sideline to sideline. He's stacking and shedding blocks. He plays with his hair on fire. And if there's one thing I would like to see Easton Mascarenas-Arnold kind of clean up, is probably playing a little bit too downhill and aggressive, and sometimes not fitting the run, and sometimes getting a little over his skis and missing some tackles. You got to have confidence in Matt Entz to kind of pull that out of him. and get Easton Mascarenas-Arnold. Again, a guy that was an all Pac-12 performer. I'm being nitpicky with his game. This is a bona fide starter for USC at that linebacker spot. And you look at some of the other linebackers coming back, Mason Cobb, a guy that you know he can play at a high level. This was an all Big 12 performer at Oklahoma State in 2022, had 96 tackles, 13 tackles for loss. He comes to USC, and I don't know if it was injury. I don't know if it was not being comfortable in the scheme. He looked a step slower. He looked hesitant. He did not look like the same player that we saw at Oklahoma State. So I think your first thing is we know Mason Cobb can do this. We know he can play at a high level. Can a guy like Matt Entz, can a guy like Danton Lynn bring back that form that we saw from Mason Cobb in 2022? And if you can, you're getting an all-conference caliber linebacker. And another guy that's probably my dark horse, and the USC fans who've been listening for the last year, this is probably one of my favorite players on USC's defense, and that is Eric Gentry. A guy that you knew he had to put on some weight. You knew he has a special set of skill sets with the length and speed that he has. This is a guy that is, in my mind, dripping with potential. Probably should have been playing more in 2023. Part of one of my knocks on Alex Grinch and that staff is just not getting the right personnel on. Guy that probably should have been playing more than Tackett Curtis, quite frankly. What happens if Eric Gentry takes that step going into 2024? Because, again, you're looking at a super talented linebacker, in my mind, that can do a lot of different things. When you talk about the linebackers, I think it comes down to playing disciplined football, making sure you're fitting the right gaps, making sure when you are getting hands on the ball carrier, you're bringing that ball carrier to the ground. You saw far too many missed tackles, but more importantly, just bad run fits, letting the running back get to the safeties kind of untouched. And so you get better play out of the linebacker room. I think this helps this defense meaningfully is stopping the run. And so you look at this USC defense, it is a two-pronged approach to be excited for. One, I think this is one of the better defensive coaching staffs that you see in the entire country, right? You look at Danton Lynn. This was a guy that did phenomenal things for UCLA in just 1 year as a defensive coordinator. He goes out and hires a guy in Matt Entz, who was a sitting head coach of a program that was winning national championships at the FCS level. And then you go and get a guy in Doug Belk. This is and then we talk about Eric Henderson and some of those other guys that joined the program as well that we've already talked about. This is a USC defense that I think gets meaningfully better from a coaching staff standpoint. And then you look at the personnel that they brought in the back half of this USC defense. I think they brought in 5 starters in Easton Mascarenas-Arnold, John Humphrey, DeCarlos Nicholson, Kamari Ramsey, and Achille Arnold. And I look at this program and I say, I am really excited to see that step. And I'll say it now. I'll continue to say this till week 1 kickoff. This is a USC program that if they figure out the defensive side of the football, this is going to be one of the most dangerous programs, not only in the Big Ten, but the country, because Lincoln Riley is going to have this offense firing on all cylinders. That's one thing you can certainly trust. If they get this defense figured out, as a Michigan fan, this is a program you don't want to play because they can put up points. And if this defense gets a little bit stronger, you're going to be in a dogfight with this team every single Saturday. Really excited about this unit, both from the personnel standpoint, from the coaching staff standpoint, a unit that we're going to continue to talk about throughout the offseason. Appreciate the USC fans, always rocking with the fellas. Cannot thank you guys enough for all the support. If you guys do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. More importantly, would love to hear from you guys in the comment section. We'll leave it at that. Talk to y'all later. Peace.